Hello, this is Cubit. Recently, a Japanese drone startup surpassed a market capitalization of 100 billion yen, roughly 700 million US dollars on the stock market. The media has been celebrating this as a remarkable achievement for Japanese deep technology. However, within this celebratory mood, I see something else. I see early signs of the erosion from within of the credibility that Japan has spent decades building as a trading nation. The issue is not that any particular company is acting wrongly. The issue is this: list on the stock market as a civilian technology company, then pivot to defense business through overseas subsidiaries. This approach is under current law entirely legal. That fact itself is a problem. And this legal loophole is now positioned to become the success model that 100 then 1,000 startups will imitate. Today's theme is the blind spot of the 100 billion yen valuation. Japan's stock market is without anyone quite noticing, becoming the foundation for building distributed weapons factory across the world. I want to walk through the structure with you layer by layer.
Do you feel a vague unease in the daily news? The US-China rift, Europe sliding toward war, the fragility of energy and food. Yet no one tells you, clearly, what to do. Stepping down, a geopolitics beyond friend and enemy, answers that question from both the technological and the historical side. Quietly but certainly, the path forward exists. And it is within reach. The independent perspective I have shared again and again on YouTube. The paperback edition is in 2 volumes, totaling 471 pages. Available now on Amazon Books. Why not place, somewhere in the back of your mind, one more lens through which to see the world?
First, let me lay out the facts. As of 2026, a Japanese drone company has surpassed 100 billion yen in market capitalization. The company is Terra Drone, led by CEO Tokashige Toru. Originally, Terra Drone was known as an industrial drone company focused on surveying and inspection, inspecting bridges and tunnels from the air, recording the condition of farmland from above. These were the kinds of quiet, peaceful businesses the company developed. However, over the past several years, the substance of the company's business has changed dramatically. Today, its growth engine lies in the field of security and defense, what is now called defense technology or defense tech. The company's relationship with Ukraine has drawn particular attention. That said, Terra Drone is not directly exporting attack drones to Ukraine. The actual mode of engagement is more sophisticated. It is divided into 3 layers. The first layer, through European subsidiaries, including the Belgian firm Unifly, the company provides drone traffic management systems. These are explained as systems that prevent drones from colliding in the air. The second layer, providing technology for counter-drone capability, that is, detecting and neutralizing hostile drones. The third layer, providing civilian drones under the framing of post-war reconstruction and demining operations. In other words, every layer is framed in terms of peace, defense, or reconstruction. And this is not a story about one specific company. Several enterprises with similar structures have already emerged, both in Japan and abroad. We are using this company as a representative example, but the broader phenomenon is what matters.
Here, I want you to pause and find something strange. A Japanese civilian company is, in effect, supporting the defense infrastructure of a country at war. Yet, no significant public criticism has emerged. Why? In my view, there are three reasons. The first is the choice of language. The company's business is always described not as attack, but as defense, or as reconstruction, or inspection. this technology to protect Ukraine civilians from Russian attacks. When framed this way, the more peace-minded a person is, the harder it becomes to direct criticism at the company. This is a rhetorical skill of a high order. The second is the power of the 100 billion yen variation itself. The business leaders, media, and investors all see this number and treat it as a symbol, one of the few Japanese companies that can win globally. The narrative that Japanese technology has been recognized by the world is far more pleasant than ethical concerns. As a result, coverage tilts favorably. The third is the difficulty of seeing the actual relationship. The software provision, transaction routed through overseas subsidiaries, arrangements spanning multiple countries. To ordinary viewers, this does not produce the visceral image of our country's company selling weapons on the battlefield. The who is selling what and to whom. The contrasts are broad, so the energy of criticism never coalesces. What is important here is that these three factors did not arise by accident. Appears peaceful, treated as heroic, difficult to pursue. When these three align, criticism becomes structurally impossible to generate. That is the phenomena unfolding in front of us right now.
Why does Japanese law fail to stop these developments? Japan does have a strict framework for restricting military-related exports. It consists of the Foreign Exchange and Foreign Trade Act, commonly called the Foreign Exchange Law, and the Export Trade Control Order based on it. To export a drone that can be diverted to military use, permission from the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry is required. This system is known as catch-all controls. The principle that even if an item is not a weapon itself, anything that could potentially be used for military purposes is caught in a broad regulatory net and held back. So the formal regulation appears quite strict. And yet, business of a kind we're discussing proceeds as legal. There is a mechanism behind this, three loopholes working in combination. The first loophole: once goods leave Japan, they become invisible. The foreign exchange law can only monitor exports up to the point of departure from Japanese territory. This is known as the extraterritoriality limit, the principle that one country's laws cannot, as a rule, follow goods beyond its own borders. After leaving Japan, the product can be modified at a European subsidiary, reassembled into something different, and shipped to a conflict zone. None of this is reachable by Japanese law. Once in Europe, the goods fall under European legal jurisdiction. The second loophole: rewriting the stated purpose. This is sometimes called purpose laundering, washing and rebadging the intended use. When exporting to a European subsidiary, the declared purpose is something like civilian components for the European market or for research and development. Under those labels, the export receives legal approval. The issue is what happens after arrival in Europe, combination with different software or parts, transformation into a military-use product. Japanese law has no mechanism for tracking this transformation. The third loophole: the argument that this is software, not a drone. The company's strength lies less in the drone itself than in the traffic management software that controls drones. Even if this software is used in a war zone to control military drones, the official framing is infrastructure to prevent accidents in the sky. By claiming this is not a weapon, it is social infrastructure, the activity slips through the regulatory net. By combining these three, deep engagement with the defense sector becomes possible without violating any current law. It is not illegal, and yet something is clearly wrong. That is the current situation.
So far, we have discussed Japanese domestic law. Now let us turn to international law. When one country supports another country that is at war, it can be treated as an enemy state by the opposing party. In international legal terminology, this is called co-belligerent status. Literally, a country that is fighting the war alongside the other. If recognized as a co-belligerent, the country becomes a legitimate target for armed retaliation. So in our case, a Japanese civilian company is providing defense technology to Ukraine through its overseas subsidiary. Can Japan, the nation, be treated by Russia as an enemy state because of this? The answer is under current international law, this is unlikely. The reason lies in a precedent set by international courts, specifically the 1986 Nicaragua case, in which the International Court of Justice articulated the concept of effective control. In essence, the question is whether the state is actually directing the company, therefore private companies' actions to be attributed to a state. The state must be effectively controlling that company. Concretely, if a government instructs a company at the operational level, modify the product to this specification, then supply it to this unit, then this is attributable to the state. But if the company is acting on its own business judgment, then no matter how much that actively ends up supporting a war, it is not legally attributable to the state. And here is a decisive blind spot. Capital ties are not considered relevant under international law. That the parent company is headquartered in Tokyo. That its shareholders are Japanese. That its executive hold Japanese citizenship. No matter how clearly all these are true, they are treated as a private capital relationship and not as a will of the Japanese state. The implications are as follows. The Japanese government can say, we have done nothing. The Japanese company can say, we are conducting a legitimated business. The capital ties are ignored under international law. A structure in which no one bears responsibility is complete. In my view, this is a hacking of the post-war international legal system through the layer of capital. Law was constructed on the assumption of a certain real economy underneath it. But today, global capitalism is quietly dismantling that assumption.
Here is a counterargument one often hears. Japanese companies are engaging in conflict zones in order to obtain combat data. This is necessary for strengthening Japan's defense capability, so some gray zone activity is unavoidable. That is the argument. To be fair, there are aspects of modern battlefield data that simulations on a desk cannot fully replace. There are 3 reasons. The first is the irregularity of electromagnetic interference, what is commonly called jamming. On the battlefield, the enemy suddenly deploys improvised jamming on frequencies they were not using yesterday. The cycle of technology rotation is said to operate on a 6-week timescale. With such rapid change, predicting everything in advance through simulation is currently very difficult. The second is the challenge of AI image recognition. Today's drones include a function whereby, when subjected to electronic interference, an AI-based image recognition system identifies the target and continues the mission. However, if this AI is trained only on clean computer-generated imagery, it becomes useless on a real battlefield. Real battle environments are full of noise, smoke, dust, the heat haze from fires, torn apart armor. An AI trained only on synthetic imagery loses target lock easily when faced with such real-world noise. This phenomenon is called overfitting. An AI trained only on clean data becomes unable to process the dirty data of reality. The third is the behavior of machines in extreme environments. Batteries degrade 3 times faster than expected in cold weather. Muddy water reduces rotor speed by small fractions of a percent. Soldiers under extreme stress press the wrong button on a control interface. These kinds of failure data, emerging from the collision of human, machine, and environment, can absolutely not be reproduced by simulation. So combat data does, indeed, have valuable aspects. This must be acknowledged as fact.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are unpacking a, frankly, fascinating structural crisis that's brewing in Japan's tech sector right now.
Yeah, specifically looking at how civilian drone startups are legally pivoting into the defense sector, which is wild.
Right. And our mission today is to explore why gathering real-world combat data is absolutely not a free pass to do this. I mean, we've got sources detailing how a specific loophole is allowing civilian tech to enter conflict zones, and it could quietly trigger a massive macroeconomic disaster.
Exactly. Because, one company doing this, it's treated as an anomaly. But when 100 or 1,000 startups realize they can imitate this exact same success model, you don't just have a loophole anymore.
You have a stampede. It's like, think of it like one person sneaking through a side door at a concert. No big deal.
Right. Nobody really notices.
But what happens when 1,000 people discover that exact same door? It's chaos.
Mm.
And to understand the stakes here, we first have to look at the actual mechanism. Our sources detail a Japanese civilian drone company that recently hit 100 billion yen valuation.
Which is huge. And they originally just did, civilian surveying.
Yeah. But then they set up overseas subsidiaries in Europe to provide traffic management and counter-drone tech to active conflict zones.
Mm.
So how does moving a few papers around an international corporate structure legally wash the tech of its origins?
Well, it basically exploits the jurisdictional limits of export controls. I mean, Japan has very strict rules on exporting weapons, right?
Yeah, decades of strict rules.
Exactly. But if a Japanese parent company exports basic dual-use civilian components to its own subsidiary in Europe,
Okay.
and then that European subsidiary takes those components, assembles them into a defense system, and deploys it locally in a conflict, the Japanese parent technically kept its hands clean.
Oh, wow. So the layer of capital, like the foreign subsidiary structure, it just creates a legal firewall?
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's a complete legal firewall.
Okay, so a few startups use this to grab a massive valuation. Good for them, right? But the sources highlight this severe systemic threat called brand suicide.
Yeah. Brand suicide is the real danger here. Japan has spent, decades building its credibility as a peaceful, reliable trading nation.
Right.
If this pivot to defense loophole normalizes, global supply chains are going to start viewing all Japanese civilian products as potential military risks.
Wait, really? Like all of them?
All of them. I mean, imagine a major Japanese manufacturer that makes basic microcontrollers for windshield wipers.
Right.
If international markets decide those controllers might suddenly be diverted through some European subsidiary into military drones, foreign buyers will just strip Japanese parts out of their supply chains entirely.
Just to avoid the compliance risk.
Exactly. Japan's entire manufacturing export base, so auto parts, precision machinery, everyday electronics, it could all be purged from international markets just due to guilt by association.
But wait, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
If the risk to Japan's core manufacturing is that severe, why isn't the government slamming the brakes on these exports today? Are they just asleep at the wheel?
No, it's actually a massive bureaucratic tug of war. It's vertical silos. On one side, you have the Defense Ministry in MITI, the Ministry of Economy, Trade, and Industry.
Right.
They are desperate for cutting-edge combat data because, you simply cannot simulate a modern battlefield in a pristine lab.
Yeah, of course. Real-world smoke, advanced electronic jamming, unpredictable weather.
Right. AI algorithms just fail under chaotic conditions unless they are trained on actual combat data. And MITI wants that data to build a booming domestic drone industry.
So they are highly motivated to keep that legal firewall open They get the raw combat data to train their AI without officially breaking the export rules.
Yes, and this is classic local optimization. They are optimizing for their own narrow departmental goals. But this completely overrides the overall optimization championed by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Because foreign affairs relies on Japan's grand design of international diplomacy and peaceful trade.
Exactly. The local win for the tech and defense sectors is actively cannibalizing the macro strategy of the whole nation.
That is wild. I mean, think about that for a second. Have you ever seen that in your own workplace, where a win for one specific department ends up severely damaging the broader reputation of the entire company?
It happens all the time, but here, they're literally trading a nation's long-term diplomatic credibility for short-term data.
Which brings us to the core realization from our sources today. This isn't just about the morality of a single drone startup.
No, not at all.
It's a fatal, national-level structural flaw. We are witnessing the hacking of the post-war international legal system through this layer of capital. By using foreign subsidiaries, the origins of defense tech are completely obscured.
Obscured from the very institutions designed to regulate them.
Right. The public markets are structurally blind to it. A company looks like a harmless civilian startup on paper, but acts as a defense contractor in reality.
Which is terrifying when you really think about the scale of it.
It is, and it leaves you with a chilling question to mull over. If public stock markets can't detect civilian companies quietly transforming into global weapon suppliers through these loopholes, how long until ordinary retail investors, maybe even you, through your standard retirement portfolio, are unknowingly funding the next distributed arms race?
Up to this point, we have looked at the issue from the multiple angles. Now, however, what I am most deeply concerned about lies beyond all of this. It is the fact that these companies are public companies. They are listed on the stock exchange. And what does it mean to be a public company? It means that ownership is open to the entire world. Anyone, by purchasing shares, can become one of the company's owners. Now, imagine the following. Suppose foreign capital with a specific political agenda, for example, U.S. neoconservative aligned fund, or money connected to a liberal economic bloc, begins accumulating large positions in Japanese defense tech companies. What happens? External will start to be reflected in the company's management direction. Through shareholder proposal, demands for disclosure of technology may be pressed. The demand for replacement of management may be made. If this escalates further, the hostile acquisition taken over through M&A becomes possible. Now, if that occurs, an apparatus is completed, one that can use Japanese technology, Japanese facilities, and Japanese personnel to instantly construct defense technology production sites distributed anywhere in the world. This is the true nature of what I call distributed weapon factories. Recall that in our previous episode, KIL-111, The Shield of Light, I discussed how defense technology ought to be handled. The fusion energy, ion optical communication, nanomaterial mirrors, AI semiconductor specialized for defense and immune to hacking. A defense system that integrates all of these, treated as the highest level of the national secrecy, fully closed. What would happen if the technology that supports that vision were exposed to public market logic? Quarterly earning pressure, maximization of market capitalization, shareholder returns. The moment those pressures take hold, foreign acquisition and talent poaching would throw technology overseas in an instant. The risk would be that is then replicated at the spear of light, pointed back at Japan. In other words, the most core defense technology must be absolutely never be handed over to public market. This is my conviction. For users, Interested in the KIL-106 discussion, please refer that episode.
Welcome to today's deep dive. So picture this. You raise hundreds of millions of dollars on the public stock market, and you're pitching your company as a friendly civilian tech startup, like maybe building drone delivery software or something.
Right, something totally harmless.
Exactly. But then you take that cash, you set up a subsidiary in another country, and you quietly pivot to selling military tech.
And because that subsidiary is operating overseas, it just completely bypasses domestic export laws. I mean, it is a massive, completely legal loophole just hiding in plain sight.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because you essentially turn the public stock exchange into, a funding mechanism for a distributed weapons factory. And everyday investors have absolutely no idea they're footing the bill.
Yeah. That is the core threat outlined in the KIL-111 source script we're digging into today. It's a really profound vulnerability in how modern capital works.
Because we're talking about dual-use technologies, right?
Exactly. Hardware or software built for civilian use that can just easily be integrated into military supply chains abroad. When public markets fund this shift blindly, economic security is severely compromised.
Right. But the really difficult question is, well, how do you even plug a loophole that straddles global finance, corporate law, and national security all at once?
Well, if these companies are technically playing by the rules, you have to go after the people who write the rule book.
Which is like trying to update the rules of a sport while the game is already being played.
Yeah.
Who actually acts as the referee here with the power to blow the whistle?
It requires a very specific three-pronged alliance. So to start, you need the Financial Services Agency, or FSA, specifically their Planning and Coordination Bureau.
Okay, because they hold the actual power over the corporate governance codes, meaning they decide what a publicly traded company actually has to disclose to its investors.
Yes, exactly. But the thing is, the financial agency historically cares about market stability and investor returns, right? Not really weapons proliferation.
That's not their department.
Right. So to make them care about the security aspect, you have to bring in the Cabinet Office's Economic Security Office. Their sole mandate is preventing critical dual-use technology from leaking to foreign capital.
Okay, I see the setup. The National Security Office identifies the threat, and the financial agency actually has the power to change the reporting rules.
You've got it.
But, bureaucrats usually don't just wake up and rewrite the financial rulebook on their own. They need some sort of cover.
Which brings in the third lever, the ruling LDP's Policy Research Council. Bureaucrats need a real political mandate to act on something this unprecedented.
Oh, so the politicians force their hand.
Yeah, politicians can force the issue by using member-sponsored legislation or injecting specific language right into the government's annual policy frameworks. If we connect this to the bigger picture, finance, security, and politics all have to align perfectly to force a systemic change.
Here's where it gets really interesting for me, though. Aligning multiple government agencies and passing legislation takes years. Why not just go directly to the stock exchange itself to stop these companies?
I mean, it sounds simple, but you can't.
But why overcomplicate it? The Tokyo Stock Exchange is hosting them. If a tech firm secretly pivots to arms dealing, why doesn't the exchange just kick them off the board tomorrow?
Because the Tokyo Stock Exchange is essentially a private enterprise. Their job isn't to police morality or national security, It's just to enforce existing black and white laws.
So if a company's overseas military pivot doesn't technically violate the strict letter of the foreign exchange law, the exchange's hands are tied.
Exactly. They can't just arbitrarily punish a company for doing something that's legally permissible.
Wow. So the actual market platform is powerless. Who are the cops on the beat then?
The strategic target is actually the Japan Exchange Regulation, or JPXR.
Okay, what is that?
They operate independently from the main exchange as a self-regulatory watchdog. They're the ones who conduct the actual listing examinations and maintain the standards.
Wait, reading through the source notes here, the current chairman of this JPXR watchdog, Nakajima Junichi, he used to be the commissioner of the Financial Services Agency.
Yes. That is the linchpin of this entire operation. He inherently understands both the mechanics of the market and the pressures of the regulatory state.
Oh, wow, that's incredibly convenient.
It really is. And this is exactly why the sources advocate for a two-stage strategy. Because you can't just knock on the JPXR's door and ask for a massive rule change out of nowhere.
Right, you need leverage.
Stage one, you agitate the politicians and the cabinet office to recognize this loophole as a massive macroeconomic crisis.
With the momentum going.
Exactly. Stage two, you use that political momentum to apply external pressure directly onto JPXR. You essentially corner the watchdog into creating a new economic security regulation for all listed companies.
It's a fascinating blueprint. We usually think of national security as something handled by generals or intelligence agencies. But here, the front lines are corporate governance codes and independent market watchdogs.
It completely redefines what it means to protect a nation's security today. Honestly, if you don't control the flow of capital, you just don't control the technology.
So what does this all mean for you listening? Well, this isn't just bureaucratic trivia. It is the exact blueprint for how global financial and security rules are rewritten.
Completely. You have to understand the specific machinery of the financial system to stop it from being exploited.
It really makes you wonder, though. If something as massive as a distributed defense network can legally hide in the boring fine print of stock exchange listing rules today, what other profound societal shifts are currently hiding in the fine print, just waiting to be funded right under our noses?
So what kind of institutional design is needed? What the current listing maintenance standards examine whether the company's financials are healthy, whether it formally complies with the law, whether it has any ties to organized crime. Fundamentally, only these 3 points. By contrast, what the current standards do not examine, the risk that arises when, after listing, the company substantively transforms the nature of its business. A company that lists at the civilian business, then after listing pivot into a business with potential for serious societal consequence. For example, deeply entering dual-use domains. Against this, the current rules apply no check whatsoever. In my view, a new regulation must be added here. As a working name, let me call it the Economic Security Regulation. There are three core elements. The first, extraordinary review mechanism. Now, when a listed company undertakes a substantial business pivot, particularly when it moves deeply into dual-use territory, the self-regulatory organization conducts an extraordinary review. The substance of the actual business has it diverged significantly from what was represented at listing? And does the divergence create economic security risk? This is the structure of the review. Furthermore, during the period from the initiation of the extraordinary review until results are published, trading in that company, the share must naturally be suspended. This is because if review-related information leaks partially, it can be exploited for insider-style trading. There was some shareholder profit, while uninformed shareholder are harms. The suspending trading is a natural measure for protecting the fairness of the stock market. The second, making substantive military supply schemes routed through overseas subsidiaries are subject to mandatory disclosure. Under the current system, whatever happens at the overseas subsidiary, as long as the numbers appear in the parent company's consolidated accounts disclosure, the obligations are considered fulfilled. But what those subsidiary products and to whom they sell? These substantive reality must be made disclosable to shareholder and society. Third, this delisting provision triggered when economic security risk is formally recognized. If review concludes that the company is causing a material harm to Japan's trading credibility or national security, or that substantial takeover by hosting foreign capital is in progress, in such cases, delisting must be an available option within the institutional framework. Please do not misunderstand. This is not the proposal to deny the existence of a defense industry. It is a proposal to return the defense industry to its proper place. Conducted non-publicly under strict government supervision within national control. That is what the defense industry ought to be. What I have discussed today is not the moral question of any particular company. It is a phenomenon by which being legal and being right drift further and further apart through the gap in our institutions. That has been essence of today's theme. The moral hazard exhibited by some business leaders, the attitude those who act first win, must be recognized at the higher level of abstraction. As a national level economic crisis, that is the perspective each viewer is asked to develop. How exactly to draft an economic security regulation for listing maintenance standard? These are precedents internationally for handling similar problems. The CFI-US framework in the United States, the NSI Act in the United Kingdom, the FDI regulation in the European Union. I would like to organize these references cases at some future point. Also, the quietly unfolding movement among regulatory authorities and political actors, and the role of public opinion in supporting those movements. I would like to take this up again as themes for future episodes. Thank you for watching. This was Cube.